Hello and welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. In today's video, the Kitchen Table series, MTG Burgeoning's longest running content series, returns with its 74th deck tech, and today it's going to be a Boros Army deck. Thank you for choosing MTG Burgeoning for your Magic the Gathering content. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and consider becoming a subscriber. Doing so supports the channel and makes you eligible for our various subscriber rewards series. If you would like to support the channel further, then click the link to our Patreon page in the description below. There you can join our ongoing Pack Wars series as a 1-month supporter or ongoing member. Or try joining Pack Wars for free by commenting on every MTG Burgeoning video in a month. We strive to offer creative rewards through our various Patreon tiers. So if Pack Wars isn't for you, then something else will be. Links to our content and various subscriber rewards series can be found in the description below. Send us an email, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. We are your channel for all things magic. What's up, MTG BC? You are the MTG Burgeoning community. Welcome back to another episode of the Kitchen Table series. We are up to deck tech number 74, and today we are going to roll out a Boros Army deck. So, as generally is customary during the Kitchen Table series, let's begin with the mana base. So we're playing Boros, so we're playing 2 colors, so we're going to split that mana symmetrically even. And we're going to begin with 8 basic planes. They're all there, all 8 of them. So we've got 8 planes, which could only mean that we have 8 basic mountains, and they're all there too. So we've got 8 planes, we've got 8 mountains, that's 16 basic lands, and to close off the land base, a full playset of Clifftop Retreats. It's our Boros check land. It will ETB tapped unless we control a mountain or plains, and we control 16 of those, so we should be pretty confident that we can put Clifftop Retreat into play and tap it for mana the moment we do. So that's 20 lands to begin this deck tech, but we're not done with the mana base yet, folks. So on top of those 20 lands, since it's Kitchen Table, we've got our customary Soul Ring. Soul Ring going in. In addition to that, we're going to play with 1 play set of Talisman of Conviction. This is going to be our Boros Talisman, of course. It costs 2 to cast. We can turn it sideways for a generic mana, or we can tap it for a red or a white mana, and if we do that, then we take 1 point of damage. 4 copies of Talisman of Conviction on top of our Soul Ring, on top of our 20 basic land. On top of our 20 lands. 16 of which are basic and 4 are check, which gives us 25 sources of mana to create our Boros armies. But before we move on to the creation of our armies, let's talk about some battlefield management first. Now, since we're in white and since we're in red, we are gifted with 2 of the greatest 1 mana removal spells or interaction spells in the history of Magic. So it would be criminal if we did not play with a playset of each of them, beginning with Swords to Plowshares. 1 white mana at instant speed. Exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. For our opponents, we don't care about this, because with the size of our Boros armies, you can gain as much life as you want. It's only a matter of time until it dips to 0 or less. In addition to Swords to Plowshares, we're also going to play with a full play set of Lightning Bolt. Now, this does not guarantee creature removal, but 3 points of damage to any target can be very versatile when we're talking about life totals, when we're talking about planeswalkers, or if we're talking about any nuisance-ridden utility or auxiliary creatures on our opponent's sides of the battlefield. 3 points of damage should be enough to send them right to the graveyard. 4 copies of Lightning Bolt. Now, as a way in which to manage our side of the battlefield for combat, let's play with a few one-ofs here. We're going to begin with Hammer of Perforos. It's a legendary enchantment artifact, which, yes, does open it up to some removal, both enchantment and artifact specific. My guess on this is if that they're going to use the removal to target this for removal, so much better than some of the other things we have coming up very shortly after this card's done being featured. It's 1 and 2 red, and creatures we control have haste, and we can pay 2 and a red mana, tap it to sacrifice a land to create a 3/3 colorless golem enchantment artifact creature token. We are more likely looking at the haste enablement here, but the creature token creator could be beneficial if a creature is needed to close out the game. All right, our next enchantment, it is Glory of Warfare, 2 in Boros colors, and as long as it's our turn, our creatures are going to get a +2/+0 buffing. If it's not our turn, our creatures are going to get a +0/+2 buffing. So whether we're on the offensive or the defensive, Glory of Warfare is going to help with both of those causes. For the exact same mana value, and we're definitely going on the offensive with this card, it is Iroas, God of Victory, a 7/4 legendary enchantment creature god, but this is indestructible, and this is only a creature if our devotion to Boros colors is less than 7. I'm sorry, it's a creature if our devotion to Boros colors is more than 7. This gives creatures we control menace, meaning they can't be blocked except for by 2 or more creatures per attacking creature. And this Iroas, God of Victory here will prevent all damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures we control. That includes non-combat damage in the form of direct damage. Maybe it's lightning bolts or starstorm or something like that. Iroas gives protection to all of our attacking creatures from any kind of damage. All right, and the last enchantment going in, we're going to uptick the mana value from 4 to 5. It is Assemble the Legion. This enchantment reads at the beginning of our upkeep, we put a muster counter on it, and then we create a 1/1 red and white soldier creature token with haste for each muster counter on it. So the longer that this stays on our side of the battlefield, the more valuable it becomes. And if it's just an enchantment and our opponents do not have anything to interact with those enchantments, it will just be a matter of time until we can close out the game. All right, now let's move on to our Boros army. We're going to begin with a couple of 1-drops here, starting with Kythian, Hero of Akros. It's a 2/1 legendary human soldier. It is Gideon. It is Baby Gideon. This is 1 white mana, and at the end of combat, if Kythian and at least 2 other creatures attack this combat, we will exile him and then return it to the battlefield transformed under our control. And we can also pay 2 and a white mana to give Kythian indestructible until end of turn. And after Kythian transforms, he comes back into play as Gideon Battleforge. It's going to enter in with 3 loyalty counters. We can +2 this version of Gideon, and up to 1 target creature an opponent controls attacks Gideon during its controller's next untap step, which is very, very similar to what original Gideon did way back in the day of Gideon Jura. We can also +1 Gideon, and until our next turn, target creature gains indestructible, and we get to untap that creature. For 0 loyalty, Gideon Battleforged becomes a 4/4 human soldier creature token with indestructible that's still a planeswalker, and all damage that would be dealt to him is prevented this turn. So we really want to make sure that we have the possibility of transforming Kythian, Hero of Akros, into Gideon Battleforged so that we can really give more and more headaches to our opponents during combat. All right, our next 1-drop, it is the Legion Loyalist. It's a 1/1 goblin with haste. It has the battalion mechanic, meaning that whenever Legion Loyalist and at least 2 other creatures attack, creatures we control gain first strike and trample until end of turn and can't be blocked by creature tokens. So there's only 1 copy of this guy in the deck, only because I don't have any more. If I had the full playset, I guarantee you we would find a way to put the other 3 copies into this deck. All right, now we're going to uptick our mana value from 1 to 2, and we're going to play with a full playset of Swiftblade Vindicator. It's a 1/1 human soldier for Boros colors. It has double strike, it has vigilance, and it has trample, all for the investment of just 2 mana. Once we're able to get some additional anthem effects, like our Glory of Warfare and some other ones we'll see later, Swiftblade Vindicator could become a massive threat to our opponents. That's 4 copies of that Boros soldier. Next up, we're going to a mana value of 3, and we're going to play with a full play set. Let's pull this down a little bit. There we go. We don't want to overshadow our Legion Loyalist. How loyal would that be? All right, 1 full play set of Tajic Legion's Edge. It's a 3/2 legendary human soldier, so make sure you're only playing 1 at a time if your play group observes the legend rule. It's 1 in Boros colors with the mentor mechanic, so whenever Tajic attacks, we put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature with lesser power. Slowly, we shift Tajic to the right, revealing, well, look at that. Swiftblade Vindicator would be a fantastic recipient of Tajic's mentor +1/+1 counter. We prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures we control. It can be dealt to Tajic, but not to any of our other armies, or not to any of our other creatures. We can pay Boros colors to give Tajic Legion's Edge first strike until end of turn. So with its haste and with its mentor mechanic, and it's preventing the non-combat damage dealt to our opponents, you can see why Tajic has a 4 spot in this deck. Staying with a mana value of 3, but changing the colors from Boros to just mono white, we have Brimaz, King of Areskos. It's a 3/4 vigilant cat soldier that's also legendary. And whenever Brimaz attacks, we create a 1/1 white cat soldier creature token with vigilance, and it comes into play attacking. And whenever Brimaz blocks a creature, we also create a 1/1 cat soldier creature token with vigilance that's also blocking that creature. So the longer that Brimaz is in combat, whether on the offensive side or the defensive side, we're going to continue to populate our side of the battlefield with more and more soldiers. 4 copies of Brimaz, King of Areskos. All right, moving up to a mana value of 4, going back to Boros colors, we have Aurelia, Exemplar of Justice. She's a 2/5 angel and also is legendary. She flies and has the mentor mechanic just like Tajic. She is going to, at the beginning of combat on our turn, we pick 1 creature we control, and until end of turn, that creature gets +2/+0 and gains trample if it's red. It gains vigilance if it's white. And yes, we can target Aurelia and make her a 4/5 flying vigilant mentoring angel, and then send her off into combat. 4 copies of Aurelia. That mentor mechanic is really going to help make our creatures even stronger, and each time we talk about the mentor mechanic, we're always looking first at the Swiftblade Vindicator. All right, we're down to our last 6 creatures. We have 1 more playset to talk about, and this one is also a mana value of 4, and we're going to go back to mono white. We have Hero of Bladehold, 3/4, just like Areskos, 2 and 2 white. This creature has the battle cry mechanic, meaning that whenever she attacks, each other attacking creature we control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And whenever Hero of Bladehold attacks, we create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens put them onto the battlefield, and they are entering the battlefield attacking. Not a legendary creature, so let's get multiple copies of the hero in play, and then just completely overwhelm our opponents. 4 copies of Hero of Bladehold. And lastly, we have 2 one-ofs that are going to help round out our combat thematics. The first is going to have a mana value of 5. It is Adriana, Captain of the Guard. She's a 4/4 legendary human knight for 3 in Boros colors. She has the melee mechanic, meaning that whenever she attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each opponent we attacked with a creatureless combat. So if we're sitting at a table with 3 opponents and we send a creature at each one of them, Adriana is going to get +3/+3. Even better, she gives other creatures we control melee too. So as long as we're sending at least 1 creature at each one of our opponents, depending on the number of opponents we have, they're all going to get buffed from Adriana's melee mechanic. And lastly, card number 60, we have our finisher. It is the Angelic Skirmisher, a 4/4 Flying Angel for 4 and 2 white at the beginning of each combat. And I must stress that this is at the beginning of each combat, not just ours. So at the beginning of each combat, we choose either First Strike, Vigilance, or Lifelink. Creatures we control gain that ability until end of turn. For the many, many, many moons that I have played with this deck, combat on our turn is always Vigilance. We leave those creatures untapped, prepared for the crackback, and when it gets to each of our opponents' combat phase, we choose First Strike, meaning that we will deal our combat damage to those attacking creatures before they can do their damage to us, which means it acts as a combat deterrent, and we end up winning the game on sheer numbers and power. All right, MTG BC, here it is. Kitchen Table Deck Tech number 74, Boros Army. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic.